to the Thought SNOB Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. Welcome to another episode of the Thought SNOB Podcast. I'm your host, Paula Swope, and I've got my husband, Will, back here. And he produces the podcast, and we switched over to a different format where sometimes I still have guests, but for the most part, I'm doing shorter commentary episodes where he gives me a topic at the last minute, and I'm not real sure exactly what topic it's going to be or what question he's going to ask. And I basically talk about it off the top of my head. Now, recently, we have been using some of the topics that I've been talking about on social media because my TikTok account is performing really well. And I think that that's an indicator that people want to hear more about those topics. So if you don't follow me on TikTok, look me up. I'm under Thought SNOB. That's also the name of my book, Thought SNOB, The Modern Spiritual Playbook for a Better Life. And just like my book, my goal for the podcast is for you to walk away from every single episode with at least one piece of information that will help you change your life for the better. So let's see what Will has for me today. What are we talking about?
Well, I want to talk about or something that came up in conversation the other day. I don't even remember who we were talking to, but they were talking about some changes that they were going through with their career and how frightening that was to them, and how much they feared change. And you said something that I thought was pretty good, and so I thought we'd bring it to the podcast. It was, and I'm not quoting you verbatim here, but it was something along the lines of you should view change like you view a bad haircut.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So people fear change because it seems so scary, and people fear change for a lot of different reasons. So what I was talking about was trying to help someone to not see change as such a scary thing, to demystify it. And what I was talking about, actually, I was talking about bad hairdos. I was talking about perms. All right. So let me go back to where that comes from. So throughout our lifetime, we make changes all the time, but we often overlook those changes because some changes happen organically, okay? Some changes take, a little more effort. And unfortunately, all right, people fear change. And what that leads to is, if you live to be 90 years old and you've lived, the same life every single year for 90 years old, that's not really living. That's kind of surviving. And I'm not the first person to say that. Wayne Dyer actually talked about that many, many years ago, and it triggered something, and I thought, God, he's really right about that. So if you never make any changes, then you tend to just kind of plateau and just live the same life over and over again, year to year. And at the top of that list for having a really high quality life, you have to make changes. Now, here's where I was talking about viewing changes as a perm, which really, for me, really bad hairdo. Okay, but at one time in my life, those perms gave me a lot of confidence. So here's where this comes from. So think about when you come out of the womb. Okay, you come out of the womb, you don't have any teeth. All right, you got to survive and nourish your body with liquids, breast milk. Babies can't eat solid foods until they, cut their teeth. You get your teeth and you move up and you start eating solid foods. And you need those solid foods to nourish your body. That's a change. By the time that you get to be 5 or 6 years old, you're eating different foods. You look different than you did when you were a baby, okay? And as you keep getting older, you keep making those changes because your needs and your wants change. So when you're viewing change, just think about this for a moment, okay? When I was in kindergarten, I ate fried bologna sandwiches every single morning for breakfast, and I freaking love those things. I would not put that in my body in this day and time for nothing. Still love them, but I'm not going to eat that processed mess. Because that processed mess doesn't serve me anymore. But when I was in kindergarten, well, it was perfectly fine. But guess what? I changed. I'm not the same person I was in kindergarten. And no one is. If you are, then that's a whole other conversation. But we're different. We change. Change is an absolute natural part of life. So when I was, let's go back to elementary school. Let's go to middle school and let's go to high school. During those years, if you pull out pictures of yourself and you take a look, you look different year to year. A lot of changes, a lot of different changes. You look different. I looked completely different in the 5th grade and in comparison to the 9th grade. And I had a lot of bad hairdos. A lot. Like in the 3rd grade, I had this hairdo that resembled, I swear, it was like a mullet, and I had a perm, and it's just the hairdresser just didn't know what she was doing, and it was just terrible. But I oddly kind of liked it at that time. So it gave me what I needed at that time. And then I would let it grow out and do something different with it. And it was just, your hairstyle really says a lot about a person's personality. And I've joked in the past that you should never trust anybody with flat hair, okay? And I'm joking about that. But it's funny to me because you can look at somebody and tell a lot about them. And these aren't judgments. They're just, vibes you get from people. And a person's hair tells you a lot. And my hair was usually, I don't know, it was kind of different from everybody else's because I was kind of different from everybody else. But I had a lot of bad hairdos. But at that time, those hairdos were in style. They served me well. I felt confident with those big old perms, that big old hair. I mean, I loved it at the time. But I got to a point that those hairstyles no longer served me because I changed, matured, my personality changed. That usually happens organically with most people. Again, if it doesn't, that's a whole other conversation. But that's a change I wanted to make. When you get sick of your hair, or you need a haircut or something, well, you'll do whatever you got to do to get into a hairstylist to make that happen. You don't fear that change necessarily, but it's a big change. But if you viewed all changes as you would a bad hairdo, then change might not seem so scary, okay? And so that's where that comment was coming from. And a lot of times, we don't realize that with every, we never stay the same. It's like with every year that grows by, our look changes, our needs change. What worked as a baby doesn't work as a teenager, and what worked as a teenager sure as hell is not going to work as an adult in their 30s or 40s. I mean, your needs and your wants change, okay? So our personalities evolve, and we don't act or perceive, the world around us and our role in it as we did when we were younger. These are all changes. It's like with people, oh my goodness. Okay. People are some of the biggest changes that you will go through. Just like we outgrow a pair of shoes, we outgrow people. And when we were growing up and, our feet got bigger and we had to go get another pair of shoes, well, we didn't really fear that change, but that was a change. That was us evolving. That was us growing. That was us doing exactly what we were supposed to do, right? So we go get a new pair of shoes because we've outgrown the old pair. Unfortunately, that happens with people as well. Just like we outgrow those hairdos that we had when we were in high school or middle school or whatever. But when it comes to people and bad relationships, why is it that we hang on to that abusive, toxic person with a death grip? Well, we wouldn't walk around in a pair of shoes that were too small because that would make our life miserable. We would be in pain, and our feet would be cut and blistered, and they would hurt and they would cramp up. Nobody's going to do that in their right mind. Why are we so fearful of changing people? Now, in Thought Snob, it's a lot of talk and a lot of exercises about people. And I made the comment that we are what we eat, but we're also who we associate with. And if we view people, changing people, as we do food, bad hairdos, and shoes that are too small, kind of puts things into perspective. And in my book, I there's a lot of research, a lot of science to back up all the claims that I make. I'm not just sitting around making shit up. And I say that associating with toxic people is as dangerous to our health and well-being as consuming toxic waste. That's what it does to our entire physiology. So why are we so afraid to make changes in our relationships? So friendships that we have had, forever, like people that we've been friends with, forever. I mean, we often grow apart, and it happens when one person evolves and maybe the other one doesn't. And when you stay together, it leads to a lot of jealousy and resentment and frustrations. It's like outdated friendships are like outdated hairstyles. They just don't fit anymore. Like those shoes. I'm not going to go back and get a pair of shoes that I had in the 6th grade. They're not going to fit me. They're not going to be in style. They're not going to serve me in any way whatsoever. Okay? This is a really great way to demystify making those fearful changes. And a lot of people don't realize that when they hang on, and I'm guilty of doing it myself, when they hang on to relationships that no longer serve them, like it's frustration. It's a blocker. It's a manifestation blocker. And if you don't believe in manifestation, you should, because it is absolutely real. And when it boils right down to it, it's an organic process. You don't need to try. It's just you attract what you are. So however you feel, whatever your energy is like, then you're going to match to like energies, aka people, places, things, like a magnet. So when you keep somebody in your life that you're absolutely not a match with, and you continue, say, to keep a weekly or a bi-weekly dinner date or a phone call or something with this person, and you dread it, but you do it because you feel obligated. You go into it and you leave just drained, and you feel guilty because you think to yourself, God, I mean, this is so and so, and we've been together for so long, and oh my God, we used to have the best time together. Some of my best memories are with this person. Why, God, why do I feel this way? God, is it me? Is it me? Fucking A, it's you. Yeah, because you've changed, and getting around somebody and spending time with somebody that squanders your time, it's a blocker. You've changed. Whatever they have to offer doesn't serve you anymore. And when you think about it, when did you have fun with them? I mean, were you 5 or 6 years old? Was it 30 years ago? We're not the same people as adults as we were as kids and teenagers. Things change. And if they don't, then more than likely you desperately want them to, but you just can't bring yourself to make those changes. So this is a really good way to put things into a realistic perspective. This isn't scary. These are just facts. And when you exit a relationship, or you exit a job, or you decide to go no contact or minimal contact with a family member, it makes you not feel so guilty. People change. It's a natural part of existing on this earth. It's a natural part of life. A lot of times with family, I've seen this a lot. I have experienced it a lot. Sibling rivalry often comes from one of the siblings evolving, doing very well, becoming financially stable. Maybe they're healthy, they have healthy relationships. When they used to not be that way, maybe they were a late bloomer. Maybe I'm talking about myself, maybe I'm not. Maybe they used to be a bit of a loser. Maybe they were lost for a long time. Well, the siblings really liked them a lot when they were a loser. But when they stepped up and really became somebody great, they were suddenly hated and accused of things. And there comes the jealousy, there comes the resentment, there comes, well, why her? Why her? Why him? Why not me? Why not me? Blah, blah, blah. A lot of sibling rivalry comes from different growth levels because one sibling lives well and maybe the other doesn't. And then here comes the judgments, here comes the judgments. So guilt holds people back, and we're often afraid of being seen as the bad person when we cut ties. And that's when we say, God, am I the problem? Is it me? Damn straight it's you. But you're not a problem. You just don't need or want what that person has to offer anymore. And that's okay. You don't have to be cutthroat about it. You really don't. No one has to be cutthroat about this. Because more than likely, if you think that someone doesn't like you anymore and you don't really enjoy their company, well, then they probably don't like you anymore and you don't enjoy their company. So why allow them to squander your time? Why sabotage yourself in allowing somebody to do that? It's just looking at the facts. And that's a lot of what the whole Thought SNOB concept is built on, is just looking at the facts, okay? Instead of romanticizing these relationships and these habits that just no longer serve you anymore. When you hang on and you resist change, it really doesn't do anything but slow you down and block you from receiving what you're meant to receive. Okay. Now, on that note, I can tell you how to test people out. Like if your intuition isn't enough, if you're a person who doesn't trust your intuition quite yet, there are ways to test people, and you can tell if someone still serves you or if they don't. I'm going to tell you, share some good news and see their reaction. Share some good news. See what happens. Then share some bad news and see what happens. And compare their reactions. Then find an opportunity to maybe give a little pushback or disagree with something that they say and see what happens. Call them out on bad behavior. See what happens. And you'll see that if you're second guessing a relationship, they can end like that with just the teeny tiniest little blow up. And if that happens, then the relationship wasn't real anyway. It was just a facade. It was a relationship of convenience out of fear because you didn't want to make changes. Now, Oprah Winfrey, why did I even say her last name? I mean, it's like Elvis or come on. Oprah, she was on, and I don't know what show it was, but she was with Gail, and she said, you absolutely cannot be friends with anybody who has the slightest bit of jealousy towards you. It's easy to spot. And I agree with that to a certain extent. Jealousy is a very misdirected emotion. Instead of being jealous of someone, the reason you're jealous of someone is because they have something that you want that you feel like you cannot obtain. Okay? So why don't you watch them and learn from them instead of being jealous of them? Because being jealous of somebody, well, shit, that doesn't hurt them. It eats you alive. Jealousy is a very misdirected emotion. So, back to what Oprah said, I agree with that to a certain extent. There are levels, though, I think. So, if it gets to the point that someone is so jealous of you that they don't necessarily want what you have, but they just don't want you to fucking have it, then that's a real problem. And when jealousy reaches that level, envy, that's when it's like, there's a lot of hate in there. There's a lot of resentment. And it's really hard to come back from that, because if somebody is jealous of you to the point that they resent your success, they resent your hard work, they judge how you got to where you are, they never pay attention to anything that you do. You don't really hear from them maybe until they have a smart remark or a criticism or something like that. It gets to that point, that friendship needs to end, because there's nothing you can do about that. You can't change people. They have to make the changes. Now, what you can do, where your power lies and where your control is in your reaction. And so if you just ignore those comments and you don't react to them, then really that's going to cause them to get probably even more frustrated. And so, not to go down a rabbit hole about that, I'm just kind of warning you that it's hard to come back from that type of jealousy in a relationship. And unfortunately, it's very, very common among women. It's very common among women. So beware of that. And I don't really know if this is the right this is the right time to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. And when I start telling it, it might not seem relevant at all, but it really kind of is. It really kind of is relevant a lot. So, and I'm not going to give any identifiers here, at all. But I talked about this on social media the other day, and I was hesitant about talking about it because the person that I'm talking about, maybe she's already seen that content, I don't know, but she's going to know immediately that it's about her, and I'm not bashing her or by any means whatsoever, but it was one of the most bizarre things that I have witnessed in a long time. So, long story short, I got together with some people that I used to work with, and I hadn't seen them in like 10 years. It had been that long. And a few days before, I thought I was excited about seeing them. And went to a lot of trouble actually to make that happen. So a few days before, I thought, what could I give them that's special? And I really do think this way. My intentions are authentic. They're genuine. They're usually pretty well, not usually. There's innocence behind the things that I do. A few days before, I was thinking, what can I give them? Something special. I just don't want to do the typical, hey, here's a bottle of wine, or here's a damn cheese ball, or whatever. I wanted to give them something special because although I hadn't seen them in 10 years, there was a lot of history and a lot of bonds between us because of our former employer that was very toxic. And so I, so Will and I have went to France back in May, and we went to this place in Ez Village, which I loved, and I found a crystal shop there and lost my shit when I saw it. I was like, oh my God. And it was just that's crystal. I've got cold chills talking about that crystal shop because right now I'm seeing this vivid image in my head of looking out the window. There was 2 windows in this crystal shop, and you looked out and you just saw the Mediterranean Sea, and it was like, wow. Again, I've got cold chills everywhere. So I got a bunch of crystals in there that day, and the lady gave me some little spare crystals in a bag, and I was going to buy some from her anyway, but she gifted them to me because we bought so many crystals from her. And I had displayed all of those. I have them displayed upstairs in my meditation room, and then I had those little freebies just kind of laying out. And I had already gifted a couple of those to a couple of people, and it dawned on me, and I thought I should give them a couple of those crystals from Ez. I mean, that would be really unique. It's like, how often do you meet up with somebody and they're like, hey, here's a crystal from Ez Village? I mean, I thought it was pretty fucking cool. Anyway, so when we sat down to eat dinner that night, it dawned on me I hadn't given them those crystals, and I brought 2. One was a smoky quartz, and the other one was a jasper of some sort. I cannot think of the full name. It was poly something. It was a jasper. So, I remembered I hadn't given them the crystals, and so I was going to sit down to eat, and I was like, "Oh, I brought you all something. Give me just a second, and I'll be right back." And so I went and got my bag, got the little bag crystals out, and I came back in, and I was like really excited to give them those crystals. And so I sat them down, and I said, "So I brought you guys 2 crystals that I got from this beautiful crystal shop in the Ez Village in France, and blah, blah, blah." And I started telling them all the details and about looking out and seeing the Mediterranean Sea. And I said, just take whichever one you like best. I said, this is just a little special memento to remember our evening together, And one of the ladies immediately, things just took a turn, and it got real bizarre real fast. And I seriously was speechless for a moment because she like was scared, and she kind of, what was kind of moving back in her seat, like away from the crystals. And she started saying that they were satanic, and started talking about tarot, and said that she said the Bible speaks against crystals. And she was dead serious. And I sat there for a moment looking at her going, oh my God. I couldn't believe what all she was saying. She wouldn't touch them. She wanted them away from her. And the first thing that came to mind, that when I was able to speak, because it was it was ludicrous, but it was also rude. Like, I've never had anybody behave that way when I gave them a gift. I mean, there is something about class. And if somebody gives you a gift, even if you don't like it and you go take it and you throw it in the fucking trash, you act grateful, because that is a sign that that's kindness. That's someone showing you kindness, and that's someone showing you love. And what I had given her was actually a gift from God. Because the first words that came out of my mouth, I said, well, these are not man-made. These came from the earth, so they came from God, and you don't have to give them any meaning or power. I mean, you got whatnots, I'm assuming, sitting around your house. It can just be a whatnot, just something to remember us by. And I don't get offended easily, but I was offended because I wholeheartedly believe in God. And anybody who knows me knows they're not even going to think about connecting me with something satanic. And I found myself getting offended, and then I had to ground myself, and I had to look at the facts. And when I started looking at the facts, I'm just like, okay, we're not a match. And I can't change how she feels. I don't even want to put forth the effort to do that. And lesson learned, lesson fucking learned. Now, when I thought that this would come up today. I've been planning on talking about it. And so I want to spend the last few minutes that I've got here just pointing out some facts, because Thought Snob is all about facts, not opinions. And not that I don't sometimes express my opinion, but for the most part, I stick to the facts. And I looked this up. And the Bible does not warn anything against crystals. It does not speak against crystals. And those were her words. The Bible speaks against crystals. What she had that confused with was idolizing something instead of God. That's what she had that confused with. Anybody who is a devil worshiper or gets in touch with some kind of a dark energy, which anybody can do that at any given time. By the way, we all have a smartphone. You can get in touch with any dark freaking energy that you want. I have never known of anybody that said, oh, hang on a second, let me go grab my Jasper so I can contact Satan. It's not how it goes. And crystals do have energy, and they're in smartphones, watches. I won't go down a rabbit hole again, but it was ignorant. So here's what the Bible actually says about crystals. In the Bible, crystals and gemstones appear mainly as symbols of beauty, wealth, and divine presence. Okay? In Exodus, it states, the high priestess breastplate is described as being set with 12 precious stones, each representing a tribe of Israel. One of those is a jasper, by the way. In Revelation 21, the New Jerusalem's walls and foundations are described with stones like, guess what? Jasper. sapphire, and amethyst, imagery of perfection and divine glory. Job, wisdom is said to be more valuable than crystal. So in these contexts, crystals are presented as valuable creations of God, not evil. The Bible does not condemn crystals themselves. It warns against any object being used for idol worship. Okay? I'll just leave it at that. It's God's natural creation. My intentions were good, and I've never ever had anybody behave that way. So if I continued on that relationship with her, and I continued to squander my time being around somebody who I clearly have nothing in common with. Now, I do not have to just hang out with people who agree with me on everything. I actually don't like for everybody to agree with me on everything. I don't like perfect people. I freaking love crazy people. They're entertaining as hell. I can't stand boring. I don't want everybody to agree with me. There's nothing better than a healthy conversation where two people sit down and have different viewpoints. I dig that. I'm a huge nerd. Like, I dig that. But when it comes to something like that, I don't have any tolerance for it. And this person, not a bad person at all, period, but it's bad for me because that caused me a lot of frustration and irritation, and I didn't appreciate it at all. And so this is why the story was relevant. Our energies don't match. There's no need. Make the change and don't do that again. And that's perfectly okay. You cannot let people squander your time. It's a manifestation blocker. Okay? So, I think that I've covered a lot. And I just want you to think about maybe reframing how you feel about change a little bit, because if you ever find yourself saying or thinking, oh, I'm afraid of change, the truth is you've been changing since conception. Think about how different you look now than you did when you were a baby. I mean, huge changes. Think about how differently you speak and dress and move around and how differently you do things. All of those major significant changes that had to be made as a natural part of life in order for you to progress at all and get to where you are today. And so wanted or unwanted change is nothing more than a thought. It's a thought. And then the action that you take after that is what really matters. And I hope that this makes you less fearful of change. And I want you to I want you to look at an old photo of yourself. I want you to do this today. And I want you to notice how much you've grown and think about what served you then doesn't serve you now. Think about get out that old picture, look at yourself, and think about the people you were around at that time. Think about what you did for fun. Think about what you ate. Think about what you drank. Think about anything you did, every aspect of your life. Let it all come flooding back. And then be real honest with yourself and take an analysis of what the traces are of you that are left from back then. And you might find that there are few. And it's like me when I used to smoke. And I was never a regular smoker that, carried a pack of cigarettes around all the time. But I did love to sit down and drink with the girls and kill a pack of cigarettes, maybe two. And they made me feel like absolute shit. And I had to stop doing that. But I was like, a social smoker for a pretty long time. But smoking was a change that I had to make. And now the thought of smoking a cigarette really makes me sick. It disgusts me. And when I smell it, if I have to be around cigarette smoke for a long time, it can make me nauseous, but my throat gets sore. And I'm just really, really sensitive to that smell. And it's the exact same thing, the feelings that I have and that I associate with cutting off toxic people. The thought of being around certain people makes me physically sick. It's like that feeling you get in your stomach, and it's not an excitement or butterflies or anything like that. It's like a really anxious anxiety kind of thing. That's how I feel when I think about being around certain people that I no longer associate with. And if I hadn't made changes, then they would still be in my life doing just as much damage to me as those cigarettes were doing. I mean, I'll close with this. We outgrow jobs, we outgrow cars, we outgrow fried bologna sandwiches, we outgrow all sorts of habits, good and bad. And, even, people outgrow their husband or their wife. They get married too young and then they're just baffled because the marriage didn't work out. Come on. Your brain isn't even fully developed until you're like 25 or 26. You are not the same person at 30 that you were at 18. You're not the same person at 18 that you were at 8. And you sure as hell are not the same person at 80 as you were at 8. So what if you're 80 years old and still doing the exact same shit that you did when you were 8? Doesn't even make any sense. So change is absolutely necessary, and the real problem is never change. It's resisting it. So I hope that this shines a lighter perspective on making changes.
Wow, a lot to absorb in that episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Give us a like, give us a follow, and hopefully we'll see you back next week. The Thought SNOB Podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought SNOB Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought SNOB Podcast with Paula Swope.